Oh, now we're getting ready to go into a really cool area. It's the exhibit area for the American Numismatic Association. And I bet I can find Douglas Mudd to tell us about some of the cool displays.
Well, we do have some wonderful exhibits. We've got some great stuff that's local of interest, such as the Aurora gold collection of all the different types of gold coins that are made at the Dahlonega Mint during the 19th century. We've got some really great classics like the 1804 dollar and the 1913 V-nickel, both of which have awesome stories. And then for the people who are interested in the older material, we've got a really beautiful set of Georgia Colonial notes that you just don't see all the time. This stuff is really rare. The Aurora gold collection is amazing. So what we have here are a bunch of gold coins that were produced from Georgia Gold in Georgia at Dahlonega. There was a mint that was set up by the U.S. Mint as a branch. What they did was, in order to take advantage of this gold that was coming out of the ground and make it easier for the locals to be able to use their gold, they created this mint, and it created $1, $2.50, $3, and $5 gold coins from 1838 until the start of the Civil War. So 1861 was the last year that they produced these coins. These coins are amazing because this is a complete set. It's one example of every type that was ever produced, plus some of the varieties. So when they made a little bit of a mistake or they changed the design a little bit, they've got all of that right here on display. This is something you can't see anywhere else in one place right now. Here we have a display that supports the Aurora Collection display because it talks about the gold rush. Everybody thinks about the California gold rush when they talk about gold rush in the United States. Well, it turns out there was an earlier gold rush. It occurred in the late 1820s. 1829, they actually called them the 29ers. It was nowhere near as big as the great gold rush of California in 1849, but it was a major event at the time. They had found gold in Georgia and North Carolina, and once the word got out, people started coming here in droves to take advantage of it. Obviously, they wanted to get rich quick, and when they came, there wasn't a whole lot going on. There wasn't a lot of support for all these people. So they needed assayers. They needed people who could actually make coins, assay the gold, process all this material, and then provide the supplies. What happened was they came up with all sorts of ways to pay for this. Part of it was you would use gold dust, and it would be valued at a certain amount so that a merchant could take it and say if it had $2 worth of gold in it, they would give you $1.50 because they didn't know for sure how much gold was in there because it was gold dust. Once you had assayers, they could actually assay the material and say, oh, there's actually $2 worth of gold in here. And eventually what they would do is they would start to put the gold into a coin form or in a bar form. In the meantime, there had to be some sort of exchange system, and so they would start issuing paper money. Some of the banks came in and then formed special gold notes, exchange notes, that were based specifically on taking gold dust and gold nuggets, doing a quick assay, and then giving the miner a certain value of note that could be used in exchange. They started then producing notes that had fixed values, and so we've got a couple of those on display, plus a few gold nuggets that are just there to show what gold would look like. And then the coins. There's Territorial gold coins, so people like Templeton Reed and the Becklers produced gold coins on their own. These aren't government pieces. They were issued, and based on the content of the gold, they valued them at $5, $10, $2.50, something like that. And people used them because they had no alternative. It was the easiest way to exchange. So what we have here is the famous 1804 dollar, often known as the king of American coins. This coin was produced in 1804, presumably, right? Well, it's got a date, 1804. No, actually, it's got a really cool story because these coins were produced in the 1830s. What had happened was that in the 1830s, the United States was trying to develop its trade connections with the Far East, countries like China and Southeast Asia. to do so, they realized that you had to have gifts. Diplomatic gifts have been traditional all throughout history. And somebody came up with the idea, why don't we have a complete set of US coins that we can give as a gift to the rulers of these countries? So they went out and tried to get these coins. It turns out that the mint had records that they had made dollars in 1804, so they wanted to include that. They had made $10 coins, and they'd made a whole slew of the complete denominational set. But nobody could find 1804 dollars. So they went and asked the mint about it, and the mint said, well, we had records for that, but we actually made the 1803 dollar at that time because dies were expensive to make, so they used up the dies. But it says, so what happened was the mint was asked to produce 1804 dollars in 1835-36, which they did, and they made these complete sets of coins that could be given to the Sultan of Siam and various other rulers in the region. When they did this, they created an instant rarity. By the 1850s, American collectors had heard of these coins, and they started asking the mint if they could get copies for themselves. And a mint director at the time decided to be helpful and allowed a few of these coins to be made. We now know that there are 15 of these coins in existence, 6 of the original 1804s that were made for these mint sets, and then 7 of the later copies, plus 1 unique piece that's at the Smithsonian Institution that was made on a Swiss shooting thaler as a test piece for these dies. And that's it, 15 coins. That's why it's called the King of American Coins, and it's got a great story. These things have been all over the world, and people love to see them whenever there's a chance to do it. What we have here is a fabulous collection of Georgia colonial paper money. In 1732, when Georgia was formed, it was the last of the colonies to be set up, and when they did do this, paper money had already been introduced in some of the other colonies. This was a new innovation. The problem in the original colonies was there wasn't any gold or silver, so they had to come up with something. So they used nails, they used fur, they used wampum, all sorts of different things to try to make something they could exchange for other goods. Money was important, and they didn't have it. Somebody came up with the idea of printing paper money and using that, and it took off. 1732, Georgia's formed, and within a few years, they're issuing paper money, at first backed by the Georgia Company, which formed Georgia. James Oglethorpe, the founder of Georgia, introduced the new money, and by the 1730s, it accepted and it was being used successfully all throughout Georgia. These notes became very rare over time because they got used up. What we have here is a collection of notes from the 1750s up through the 1770s that is second to none. There's amazing pieces in here that are super rare, and what's really cool about them is they really show you a microcosm of what was going on in Georgia. There's different designs on the notes. You read the notes and you find out what the notes were exchanged for, what kind of money they were using. They were using British money, and then they started using Spanish money. It's an interesting little, in a small piece of paper money, you can see a lot of the history of Georgia at that time. It's a great set. I hope you get a chance to come down and see it.